times, but I know that is real. And to see that, and that was your first year there, so you were 18.
I was 19. It was my
19.
second year.
Oh, okay, okay. So you're still pretty young, and was that kind of like a reality, another type of reality check that
It
came
was.
that said, "Hey, this
It
place
was.
is really dangerous."
Right. And the thing that really, really got me was I had a brother and a cousin on the yard with me. And when they yelled, get down, those two people were the first two people that I looked for to make sure
Right.
that they weren't in harm's way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was funny about it was all three of us did the same thing, looking for each other, and kind of recognize each other and, throw our hands up, pointing, and make sure we recognize each other, and, that's when we got out. But, yeah, it was a reality check, and, you would internalize it, as time goes on. And, I'm laying in the bunk, and I'm thinking to myself, this is my life right now. And I ask myself, how long is this going to be my life? And I really, really just thought about it. Like, there's a potential that I can die in prison. So to go to your point, yes, that was a emotional awakening. I really, really started viewing prison as a place that I could potentially die. And of course, who wants to die in prison? But when you see those kind of things and you see how easy it is for people to kill, it becomes a reality, especially when you're 19. When you're 19 years old, it wasn't a fear. It wasn't a fear. It was like you said, it was an awakening. It was a reality check.
Right.
And me and my brother and my cousin, fortunately, we were in the same building. So we got to talk about these things and stuff like that, in the day rooms and stuff like that. And we said, anytime anything happens, make sure you recognize where all three of us are at the same time. Don't get out until you recognize where we are. So, of course, it felt good, and there was a comfort. There was a level of comfortability knowing that I had two people there that I know for sure that was going to ride for me. So, yeah, it felt good. But yes, to answer your question, I swear to you, it was a hell of an awakening when I saw that. And of course, since then, I've seen plenty other ones, and now I always make it a purpose. When I see someone get hurt, I make a purpose of doing a small prayer for them and their families to make sure that they have some emotional support. Not just from our Creator, but from people that is around them. And I did that because I didn't do it for a long time, so I had to.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, that is something. The first time I realized that things were changing in society was me and my children were in the car, and the police had the streets blocked off. And I think my youngest probably was 2 or 3, and my oldest, she probably was about 14, maybe younger, maybe. But I remember there was a body in the street. And I said, is that a body? And they were saying, yeah, and people were stopping, getting out their cars, looking and all that stuff. And I couldn't hardly breathe looking at that. But my children were looking at that as if they were watching a movie. And I was kind of looking at them like, what's wrong with y'all? What's happening? Why y'all, just like, this is okay? And then
Yeah.
I realized that even the games and the music had shifted. Where when I was young, when rap first started, my children was young when they still, it became really popular, and it was a kind of the music was just kind of funny, entertaining, and what have you. Then they started introducing guns and violence and all that stuff, the games and different things have changed. And when you say stuff like that, a lot of times people will say, well, no, that's not it. It's coming from home or it's coming from here or whatever. But that is it. You have to pay attention to what's influencing your children, because now seeing a dead body in the street is not a big deal. They have a game, I forgot what they call the game, where people is carjacking, people getting snatched out and whatever. And I'm like, if you playing that every day, then that's going to become a part of you, because whatever you consume, if you consume enough of it, it becomes a part of you. It's like what they say, you are what you eat. So it's the same thing.
Right.
And I understand being in that environment in prison, where you can't say, hey, I'm moving, I'm going home, I'm leaving this environment. And because, like you said, it's a potential, you can potentially die there. There is always that possibility, and that thing is real. And I know when you seen that, it was like, goodness, that a person can do another person like that, and so it's a lot of violence everywhere, here, everywhere. Speaking of the violence, because you were in a gang, and so from my understanding, because my son was in prison, and from my understanding, it was it's like you kind of gravitate each other for safety purposes, looking out for each other and whatnot. So is the gang like the Bloods and the Crips or whatever? And I know they have the Hispanic gangs. Do they get along at all, or are they just like they are on the street?
No, they get along.
Okay.
It's different in prison. People find common ground on a lot more things, a lot more similarities than differences, believe it or not. But what's crazy is, and I'm pretty sure Donnell can attest to that, is you will find
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
At more often than most, the people that you become the closest to are people that will be considered your rival on the streets.
Right.
People that you would never think that you can deal with on a regular basis on the streets. Be your closest road dogs in prison. I swear.
I never was a game banger, even though I had some relatives thought I was a part of something, but I wasn't. But I knew a lot of gang members, over there on 89th Street, 89th and Compton. So I knew a lot of gang members, but I never could grasp the gang mentality until I started understanding, and we had this conversation on one of our segments, when you start feeling separated or disconnected from your family, and you start, then you gravitate to people that would accept you. And I was kind of like that. I wasn't in the game, but I had some issues, and I dealt with a lot of rejection and a whole bunch of stuff. And those were the people that say, "Hey, Deborah, come over here," And the blessing in that was, and it was a blessing in that when I look back, it was that the older ones that were there in that neighborhood, they protected me. They knew me. I knew them, got to know them and whatever. I knew their, wives and girlfriends and stuff. And because when you think about gang members, you only think about the violence, the drugs, or what have you. But a lot of them have whole families and what have you. But anytime it looked like I was about to get into something, they would say, "Oh no, you're not doing that. I promise you're not doing that." And I used to say, "What? How you gonna tell me what to do?" I was flipping off and whatever. And I was on my own at a very young age, so it was like I appreciate that part. because people, there's such a
Right.
negative perception of gangs, and it is a negative thing. I'm not covering it up at all, but there is
Right.
something in it that you have to consider. The
Right.
the bond that happens, the protection and a lot of stuff. I also knew people that grew up over there that wasn't a part of the gang, but they were protected by the gang. Just because they all grew up together, went to school together, everybody's mama knew each other and all that stuff. So, you know, I get
Right.
it. I get it. And then being inside, and the problem I had really, I knew two first cousins that were in two different gangs, and they were feuding with each other. And one time I seen one of them, I said, but what else? You be the one to kill your cousin. Are you know, that just bothered me. But to hear that
Right.
they're not doing that inside, that's, I like that. I like the fact that they're not doing
Right.
that on the inside. I don't want them to do it on the outside either, but that's good to hear. That
Right.
is good to hear.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And it's hard to stomach when you first come to prison as a full-fledged gang member, you know. And once you're here and you fortunate to have older people around you that want you to do better for yourself, you know, has been down for a long time. And you know, I've been down 29 years, and of course that's a long time. But I know somebody, and one of the closest people that I'm to in prison has been down 44 years.
Wow.
So the 29 years don't really sound like much, you know. And he's been knowing me since I was 18, and you know, so at that time, when I was 18, he had already been down for what? 16 years. You know, so yeah, but you know, you know, his teachings and his guidance, you know, among a few other people, because I don't think there's like a handful of people that I can actually say that I've really, really grown to know, you know, inside of a brotherhood, you know, that look out for each other. And I'm not talking about in terms of, you know, the materialistic things. I'm just talking about, you know, the guidance and the uplifting of one another. When there's down, when people are down, people assist you in uplifting that spirit, and it's beautiful to watch. And that's one of the beauties of prison. You know, is finding those kind of people. Those are dominant of us, even in prison, but, you know, they do exist, though.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, I can't really, you know, when we say that's a good thing about prison, we're not saying that's the best place to be.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
The situation, you know, it's like you got to find some good somewhere in order to survive. And everybody in prison is trying to survive. So we're gonna start wrapping up this segment, and this was good. I think we hit on some good stuff here, giving people the understanding of what's really happening there. It's important, and we talked about this in our other segment. It's important
have 60
to have
seconds remaining.
Communication is just important, no matter where you are. And to have someone, you think about being in a situation where you're separated from your family and whatever, you create these bonds, and then you're learning about each other like most people don't learn about each other on the outside. You're hearing people's most personal fears and their concerns and what have you. And that's what goes on when you have that kind of relationship. Okay, we have like a minute, not even a minute. You got some last words before we shut down?
Not really. I think, you know, all the proof is in the pudding, but I do want to give a shout out to Lonnie Cocktail, you know, for assisting you as well. You know, my father in keeping you secluded from the gang life.
Yeah, he
you know,
did.
And he told me about that on a personal level, so I do want to shout out to him and my mom's
All right, his phone cut off. We're gonna continue our discussion when we come back. Remember, we're trying to get these young men out of prison so they can start their own lives. They have learned